Go ahead, please.
You want the White
Go
House
ahead.
and hard.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, you are meeting Prime Minister Modi of India this
Yes.
afternoon. What kind of trade and tariff relations you would like to have with India, and what's the vision for India? US?
Yeah, India traditionally is the highest, just about the highest tariff country. They charge more tariffs than any other country. And I mean, we'll be talking about that. But again, whatever they charge us, we're charging them. So it works out very well. It's a beautiful, simple system. And we don't have to worry about, gee, we're charging too much or too little. But traditionally, India is right at the top of the pack, pretty much. There are a couple of smaller countries that are actually more. But India is a they charge tremendous tariffs. I remember when Harley Davidson couldn't sell their motorbikes into India because of the fact that India, the tax was so high, the tariff was so high. And Harley was forced to build, I guess they built, I don't know, that was a while ago, but I think they built a factory in India in order to avoid paying the tariffs. And that's what people can do with us. They can build a factory here, a plant or whatever it may be here. And that includes the medical, that includes cars, that includes chips and semiconductors. That includes everything. If you build here, you have no tariffs whatsoever. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think our country is going to be flooded with jobs.
So,
What should consumers expect? Are prices going to go up short-term,
Well,
long-term?
not necessarily. I mean, not necessarily, but I'll tell you what will go up is jobs. The jobs will go up tremendously. We're going to have great jobs for everybody. This is something that should have been done many years ago. China did it. I mean, China did it at a level that probably nobody's ever seen before. If you manufactured a car, you couldn't send it into China. The tariff was so high. So everybody went and they built in China. It was no big secret. So we're going to see, but it's going to mean tremendous amounts of jobs. And ultimately, prices will stay the same, go down. But we're going to have a very dynamic country.
but if prices go up, Mr. President, because of these tariffs, who do you think voters should hold responsible?
Oh, I think what's going to go up is jobs are going to go up, and prices could go up somewhat short term, but prices will also go down. And I think the farmers are going to be helped by this very much because product is being dumped into our country, and our farmers are getting hurt very badly by the last administration. The last administration hated our farmers, like at a level that I've never seen before. I think our farmers are going to be helped. Jobs are going to be helped, but our farmers are going to be helped. Our manufacturers are going to be helped. And again, if somebody wants to come in, including the car companies, if they want to come in and build car plants, they'll do it without tariffs, and therefore prices won't go up. There could be some short-term disturbance, but long-term, it's gonna make our country a fortune.
So Americans should prepare for some short-term pain.
No, you
possibly.
said that. I didn't say that. You know?
Well, if the prices go up.
Well, let's see what happens. Nobody really knows what is going to happen other than we know that jobs are going to be produced at levels that we haven't seen before. We know that we think interest rates are going to ultimately be coming down because of things that happen, and they go hand in hand with the tariffs. But we think that the prices for some things, many things, it could be all things, will go down. Ultimately, will go down.
Mr. President, can you explain the timeline here, sir? There's a period of time for a review, a report, 180 days.
Sure.
What's the earliest date that you think tariffs will actually be implemented and executed?
Well, I would say maybe I'll ask Howard to answer that because he's going to be the one that's implementing. What do you think?
Our studies should be all complete by April 1st. So we'll hand the president the opportunity to start on April 2nd if he wants. So I think we'll be ready to go
Pretty
on
close.
April 1st, and we'll hand it to the president and he'll make his decisions. But remember, if they drop their tariffs, prices for Americans are coming down. Our production's going up and our costs are going down. Remember, it's a two-way street. That's why it's called reciprocal.
And have you spoken to any American CEOs directly about this? Are they calling you and asking
I was
for
talking to
exemptions,
many,
for
and
example?
many love it. And they say this is going to be the thing that makes our country really prosperous again. And this is going to be what pays down to $36 trillion in debt and all the other things. And this is going to be, this is an amazing day. I think this is going to be a very big day. And in a very positive way for our country. Yes, please.
Mr. President, you've talked about the VAT and the EU before and your concerns with how the EU treats you. Do you have a number in mind on the European Union? Do you have an idea of where that number is going to land?
Well, what they are now is they have a 20% VAT tax, which we're considering to be similar or the same as the tariff. Plus, they charge lots of fees. And, you know, they're doing something else. European Union's been very tough on our companies. They sued Apple, they sued Google, they sued Facebook. They sued many other companies, and they're American companies, and the kind of numbers are staggering. And the court system over there is not very good to our companies. If you know that Apple had to pay, I think, $16 billion in a penalty, a court case that was really shocking because most people thought they would have won that court case, people that watched it. So they've been very tough. Airlines have called me up and they said, could you help us with Europe because they're charging us so many different fees. I got a call from the head of American, United, and other airlines saying, every time we land a plane, we get just absolutely killed by the European Union. And so they haven't been treated as good. You know, we think the European Union is wonderful. We all love Europe, love the countries in Europe, but European Union has been absolutely brutal on trade. Canada has been very bad to us on trade, but now Canada is going to have to start paying up. And Canada has been tough on the military because they have a very low military cost. They think we're going to, you know, protect them with our military, which is unfair. So Canada is going to be a very interesting situation because, you know, we just don't need their product. And yet they survive off the fact that we do 95% of what they do. And Canada is just absolutely, I say it, and sometimes people smile and sometimes they say, great idea, but Canada, their taxes would come down greatly. Their security would go up greatly. Amazing things happen to Canada. And really Canada in this particular, why would we pay $200 billion a year in subsidies to Canada when they're not a state? You do that for a state, but you don't do that for somebody else's country. So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state.
Going with Canada, there was obviously a delay in implementing those tariffs.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens. But it just sets up so good for them. Look, the people would pay much less tax than they're paying right now. They'd have perfect military protection. They don't have any military protection because and you take a look at what's going on out there. You have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have Chinese ships, you have a lot of ships out there. And, you know, people are in danger. This is a different world today. It's a different world. They need our protection. Yes.
You mentioned Elon Musk and the efforts that he's undertaking with your
Yeah.
authority. You granted him new authority this week. Will he secure any new government contracts while he is working on DOGE?
No, not if there's a conflict. If there's no conflict, I guess what difference does it make? But we won't let him do anything having to do with the
Are
conflict.
you personally checking to make sure there's no conflicts of interest?
Yeah, I am.
He answers to you.
Sure, he does. First of all, he wouldn't do it. And second of all, we're not going to let him do anything where there's a conflict of interest.
Mr. President, your negotiations with the EU are there's discussions ongoing already. How quickly do you expect that you'll hear back from them about
I don't
any
know.
of these other
I can't
measures?
tell you, yeah. The EU's been very nasty. It's just been, they haven't treated us properly. Look, we were great to them on NATO. Essentially, it's a similar group of countries. When I came in, my first term, I raised their fees. I mean, they were not paying. We were paying for, in my opinion, almost all of NATO. And now, you know, I had the bad moment with the press where the press said, well, does this mean you won't protect them? And I said, I won't protect them if they're not paying. But because I said that, the Secretary General, as you know, said it was the greatest thing he's ever seen because the money came pouring in. But they don't treat us right on trade. They don't treat us right on the military either. I mean, if you look at Ukraine, we're in for probably $200 billion more than Europe. Why are we in for more than Europe? We're in for more than Europe. I mean, think of it, or NATO. I mean, let's call it NATO because Canada's in. By the way, Canada is just about the lowest payer. Also, they shouldn't be. They are just about the lowest payer in NATO, in addition to everything else. So Canada's really been taken advantage of. And if they had to pay just something modestly fair, they wouldn't be able to succeed as a country. And that's why I feel they have to become a state. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is it your expectation that partners will offer major concessions and that you actually don't end up applying those tariffs?
No, I think that a lot of them will stay the same, and whatever they pay, I'll pay. I mean, we'll have a lot of them stay the same. I think some, look, I heard they, as an example, EU lowered their tax on cars down to the exact same amount that they were much higher. They were approximately 5 times higher, and they lowered them down to the exact tax that we're charging. That took place like yesterday or the day before. Is that a correct statement? I think so, yeah.
Do you expect any exemptions or waivers?
I don't expect that, no. This is a simple system, and there wouldn't be any. And in the case of Apple, I gave them a waiver, exemption in my first term because Samsung was in South Korea, and Samsung didn't have to pay the tax because it was a tax on China, and Apple makes a lot of their product in China. So I did that because it wouldn't have been fair. But now this applies to everybody across the board. This is a much simpler way of doing it, much better way.
You had that major call yesterday with President Putin of
Yeah.
Russia. President Zelensky responded today, basically saying any agreements they won't accept unless they're made with Ukraine. Will Ukraine have a seat at that table for those
Of
negotiations?
course they would. I mean, they're part of it. We would have Ukraine, we'd have Russia, and we'll have other people involved too. A lot of people, a lot of forks in the, a lot of forks in this game. I'll tell you what, this is a very interesting situation, but the Ukraine war has to end. The young people are being killed at levels that nobody's seen since World War II. And it's a ridiculous war, and it has to end. We had a good talk with President Putin. I had a good talk with President Zelensky, very good talk. And somebody said, oh, I should have called Zelensky first. I don't think so. I mean, we have to find out whether or not Russia wants to make a deal. I know that Zelensky wants to make a deal because he told me that. But I now know that Russia wants to make a deal.
Did you ask Secretary Hegseth to walk back his comments yesterday saying Ukraine won't join NATO and won't go back to pre-2014
No,
borders because
no,
those
I
are
didn't, no.
bargaining chips you could use?
No, I didn't. Somebody told me that, but I thought his comments were good yesterday, and they're probably good today. They're a little bit softer, perhaps, but I thought his comments from yesterday were pretty accurate. I don't see any way that a country in Russia's position could allow them, just in their position, could allow them to join NATO. I don't see that happening. And long before President Putin, Russia was very strong on the fact that I believe that's the reason the war started, because Biden went out and said that they could join NATO, and he shouldn't have said that. As soon as he said that, I said, you know what? You're going to have a war now, and I was right about that. This is a war that would have never happened if I were
You
president.
don't think it's President Biden's fault, not President Putin? I mean, he's the one.
I think Biden is incompetent, and I think when he said that they could join NATO, I thought that was a very stupid thing to say. I thought when he said, well, it depends if it's a minor incursion. In other words, it's okay if Russia does a minor incursion. I thought that was a very foolish thing to say.
When can we expect on auto?
The other thing that got it started was how badly Milley and these stupid people, these bad generals, how badly they did with Afghanistan. I was going to pull out, but we were pulling out with dignity and strength, and we were going to take our equipment with us and everything else. They are, I mean, what they're doing is what they did with that. I think Putin looked at that mess and he said, wow, this is a great time. I'm going to go in. But what the Americans said, I'm not blaming Americans, but I will say what they said had a big influence on his deciding to go in. Yeah.
When Elon Musk met with Prime Minister Modi earlier today, did he do so as an American CEO or did he do so as a representative of the U.S. government?
Are you talking about me?
No, Elon Musk.
Elon, I don't know. They met, and I assume he wants to do business in India. But India is a very hard place to do business in because of the tariffs. They have the highest tariffs just about in the world, and it's a hard place to do business. No, I would imagine he met possibly because he's running a company. He's doing this as something that he's felt strongly about for a long time because he sees what's happening and he sees how the country is really being hurt badly by all of the fraud waste and abuse. Yeah.
So how does Modi know whether he's meeting with a CEO or meeting with a representative of your government?
Well, he's meeting with me in a little while, so I'm going to ask him that question. All right, I'll ask him that question. Yeah.
On auto tariffs, what should we expect, sir? You mentioned obviously steel and aluminum and pharmaceuticals. What are you thinking about auto tariffs? We haven't talked about that much.
I think autos are coming soon. I think they're all coming more or less at the same time. And it's not going to be a big shock to the system. But what it's going to do is it's going to bring pharmaceuticals back to our country. Much more important than the money. It's a lot of money, but it's going to bring pharmaceuticals back to our country. It's going to bring chips back to our country. It's going to bring automobile. We're going to do a lot more automobile manufacturing in our country. You know, when I announced this during the campaign, they were going to build the largest car plant in the world in Mexico. It was almost under construction. It was just starting. And when they heard me make that statement, and they thought I was going to win the election, actually, it was a few months before the election itself. China was building the car plant. It was going to be the largest in the world. They immediately stopped construction. You can see the foundations there. They immediately stopped. When they heard I was doing this, that would have destroyed Detroit. It would have destroyed Michigan. This plant would have taken up more than almost the whole state built. And it would have been very destructive. When they heard me speak, and they said, wow, if he gets in, we're gonna lose our shirt. So they stopped building. That's the impact that tariffs have. Again, you know, I say it, and I say it loudly. It's the most beautiful word, but now I say religion, love, and a couple of other things are more beautiful, because I got in a lot of problem with the fake news when they said, oh, other things are more important. God is more important, but these are the words. But I would say it's number 4 or 5. To me, it's the most beautiful. And I'll tell you what, I think really reciprocal tariffs, those 2 words, reciprocal makes tariffs really fair.
I mean, no exemptions, right? It would be all auto imports?
Any exemptions now, because you don't need to. With reciprocal, you don't need to.
Mr. President, is Gavin Klager just arrived at the IRS?
Fox Radio. Do you have a update on the TikTok negotiations?
Yeah, we have a lot of people.
Timeline's running out.
Well, I have 90 days from about 2 weeks ago, right? And I'm sure it can be extended, but let's see. I don't think you'll need to. We have a lot of people interested in TikTok. And I hope to be able to make a deal. I think it would be good. You know, people have learned it's very popular, and we'll have to probably get approval from China to do it. But we have a lot of people that are interested, and a lot of people, I think China will be interested because it's to their benefit too. So I look forward to that. But we have a lot of people that are interested in TikTok, quite a few.
Mr. President, Doge workers arrived today, Gavin Klager and others arrived today at the IRS. Do you expect to close the IRS, or what are you expecting?
No, I don't expect it, but I think that the Internal Revenue Service will be looked at like everybody else. Just about everybody's going to be looked at. So it's they're doing a hell of a job. It's an amazing job they're doing. And you know, that force is building these, I call it the force of super geniuses, but it's building. And you know, they go up and they talk to some of the people about certain deals, and the people get all tongue-tied. They can't talk because these people get it. They're very smart people. We need smart people. Yes, Brian?
On tariffs, sir.
Yeah, Brian?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, I know that during the campaign, it was huge in Pennsylvania as far as bringing back manufacturing. Have we talked to any CEOs since the tariffs were announced on steel and aluminum? What's the feedback from those guys?
They are in love with it. As you know, in Pennsylvania, U.S. Steel is through the roof. They're all through the roof. That's why I didn't want U.S. Steel to make a deal with Japan or anybody else. I think it's going to do great. But I think maybe more than anybody else, the steel companies and aluminum companies, they're in love with what's happened. And this will eventually be the car companies and chip companies. We have to have chips made in this country. Right now, everything's made in Taiwan practically, almost all of it, a little bit in South Korea. But everything, almost all of it is made in Taiwan. And we want it to be made. We want those companies to come to our country, in all due respect. You know, they took the business away. Taiwan took our chip business away. We had Intel, we had these great companies that did so well, and it was taken from us, and we want that business back. We want it back in the United States. And if they don't bring it back, we're not going to be very happy.
You
Sir, on
mentioned
tariffs, are you-
pharmaceuticals as well in China. That's national security to bring that back.
Yeah, China and other places. We want to get the pharmaceutical and drug business back into the United States, where it should be, right?
Mr. President.
On tariffs, are you concerned that the countries that would be most affected, like India, would just shift their trading to China?
No, I'm not concerned about anything, really. I mean, I'm just doing what's fair. This is a very fair thing. This should have been done a long time ago. I would have done it, but then COVID hit. I was getting ready to do this years ago, and first time we had the most successful economy in history, and then COVID hit, and this was going to be the thing that I was most waiting to do, but it was awfully hard to do this with Italy and France and Spain and all those people were dying, and then we put tariffs on. See, I have a big heart.
Sir, on Ukraine, when Putin says that he really wants peace, do you believe him?
Yeah, I do. I believe he wants peace. I believe that President Putin, when I spoke to him yesterday, I mean, I know him very well. Yeah, I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't. I'd like to see peace.
Do you trust President
I
Putin?
believe that, I believe that he would like to see something happen. I trust him on this subject. I think he'd like to see something happen. I think it could have happened a long time ago. I think Biden, number one, it shouldn't have started, but it did. And now all those cities are knocked down like demolition sites. All those beautiful golden towers are knocked down. There's nothing going to replace them. But much more importantly, you lost millions of people. A lot of soldiers, but you lost millions of people. When they knocked down those cities and they're all laying down on the side, they're lying down just in ashes and all crumbled up concrete. They literally look like a world-class demolition site. And many of them, almost all of them, but many of them. And this should have been done by Biden years ago. This should have never been allowed to happen. I know he's a friend of yours.
But couldn't Putin just withdraw his
He's a friend of
troops today?
CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore, because they have no credibility. Okay, who else? Yes, please.
Sir, if you can find a buyer in the United States for TikTok, do you think Xi Jinping will authorize the sale of it, or will
So I'm going to make it worthwhile for China to do it. I think so. I mean, I got to know TikTok because during the election, I ended up with 36% higher than my opponent with youth. Okay, that never happened before. I mean, that's always been a Democrat thing, youth. It became a Trump thing. And I think TikTok, I think Joe Rogan was a part of it. Some of the great people that I did interviews with were a part of it. But I think that TikTok was I think it was a big part. Look, as you know, we were up by 36% with youth. The Republican was never up with youth. And I focused on TikTok, and I found it to be amazing, actually, and very fair. And I think the image of TikTok is different than it was before the election. I think people saw it and they view it as a positive, not a negative. I think it'll be to China's advantage to have the deal be made. Yeah.
How much money do you think you'll raise from tariffs on an annual basis?
That's the most interesting question. I think it'll be a staggering amount. It will be I call it the External Revenue Service. That was a name that was devised by a few of us, but I think it's going to be a staggering amount.
We've heard it's the number 1 trillion floated in meetings with senators. Is that a number you thought
I
of?
don't know, but already the Senate's saying, well, wait a minute, they're looking at some of the numbers and they're saying, whoa, look, we want to, I say America first. I say make America great again. That's what we're doing. I think it's the most important thing I've signed. I've signed some very important things. Right to try was so important. I mean, a lot of important things. Space Force, the biggest tax cuts in history. This could be one of the most important things that we've ever signed.
Do you expect the Russians and President Putin to attend the summit in Saudi Arabia?
Eventually, yeah. Not quite yet. It's a little early. They're having a meeting in Munich tomorrow. Russia is going to be there with our people. Ukraine is also invited, by the way. Not sure exactly who's going to be there from any country, but high-level people from Russia, from Ukraine, and from the United States.
Do you want to have Russia back to the G7, sir?
I'd love to have them back. I think it was a mistake to throw them out. Look, it's not a question of liking Russia or not liking Russia. It was the G8. And I said, what are you doing? You guys, all you talk about is Russia, and they should be sitting at the table. I think Putin would love to be back. Obama and a couple of other people made a mistake and they got Russia out. It's very possible that if that was the G8, you wouldn't have had the problem with Ukraine. And if I was president, you definitely wouldn't have had the problem with Ukraine. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine. But you ask a very good question, the G8. It used to be the G8, and then these people threw them out. And I was arguing with Trudeau and with numerous of the people. Actually, Prime Minister Abe, a great man from Japan, agreed with me 100%. And some of the others did too. But I got there, it was the G7, as you know. They had already been terminated. I think it would have been very helpful, and it still would be helpful to have Russia be a part of that mix. And I think if they were, I don't think you would have had the problem that you have right now.
Russia
Them
is
out of
part
course
of the
because
G20.
They kicked them out, of course, because they illegally annexed Crimea. I mean, how would you have responded if Russia invaded or
Well, you
took
know,
over?
they took Crimea during Obama. They took, well, now they're looking to take the whole thing. Then they took a big chunk of land and people, as you know, during Bush. And now they're trying to take the whole thing during Biden. You know, the only one that didn't give them anything is Trump. They never took anything with Trump, nothing, not 2 inches of property of land. But Crimea was Obama. And then Bush gave them a lot, if you remember. And then, in fact, it's a sort of a standard little phrase. And Biden's giving them everything because this is a war that shouldn't have been had. And the only one that didn't give them anything is Trump. It's just the way it is.
What's the message from Wall Street about these tariffs? So there's been some nervousness on Wall Street about the
I don't think
impact.
so. I mean, there hasn't been very much, and I think it's going to make the United States stronger, and in many ways, it could make other countries stronger too. You know, other countries want to have a strong United States. They want to have a strong America, and I think it's going to make us very, very strong, much stronger. And we have a lot of work we're doing on the military. Our military already, I've authorized some contracts to be built that are very substantial. We're building the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest military equipment in the world. We're building it. At some point, when things settle down, I'm going to meet with China and I'm going to meet with Russia in particular, those two. And I'm going to say, there's no reason for us to be spending almost $1 trillion on military. There's no reason for you to be spending $400 billion. China's going to be at 400 billion. We're at $1 trillion. We're going to be at close to $1 trillion. And I'm going to say, we can settle this on, we can spend this on other things. We don't have to spend this on military because, and I'm going to be meeting with China. You know, we were trying to de-escalate nuclear, and I was in a position where Russia had agreed and China had agreed we were going to start. And then we had a rigged election, so that never took place. But this one was too big to rig. We won by so much that it was too big to rig.
You want to do the China meeting in the United States, or would you travel to China for that?
For what?
The China meeting. You do that here.
I tell people all the time, you know, the question is who's going to have the first meeting, where are you going to, I say this to Putin, to President Xi, I say to everybody, never bothered me, you know, I'm willing to say I'll go first. It doesn't matter. It's the end result that counts. So it doesn't make any difference.
When do you want to have a conversation about global defense spending, you, China,
Well, I'd
Russia?
like to have that, as soon as things settle down, I'm going to have that conference primarily with China and Russia, because those are the two that really are out there. And we're going to have them spend a lot less money, and we're going to spend a lot less money. And I know they're going to do it. They agreed to it. We were talking about denuclearizing, and President Putin and I agreed that we were going to do it in a very big way. There's no reason for us to be building brand new nuclear weapons. We already have so many. You could destroy the world 50 times over, 100 times over. And here we are building new nuclear weapons, and they're building nuclear weapons, and China's building new nuclear weapons, and China's trying to catch up because, you know, they're very substantially behind, but within 5 or 6 years, they'll be even. And we're all spending a lot of money that we could be spending on other things that are actually, hopefully, much more productive. Hopefully, there'll never be a time when we need those weapons. If there's ever a time when we need nuclear weapons, like the kind of weapons that we're building and that Russia has and that China has to a lesser extent, but will have, that's going to be a very sad day. That's going to be probably oblivion.
Do you see that as separate conversations, or do you see one giant summit with you, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, I could see that. Let things calm down a little bit. You know, when I left, we had no Middle East problem. We had no Russia going into Ukraine. They never would have done it. Putin never would have done it. And I came back and we got like the whole world is blowing up. So when we straighten it all out, then I want to have one of the first meetings I want to have is with President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia. And I want to say, let's cut our military budget in half. And we can do that. And I think we'll be able to do it.
If Elon Musk identifies wasteful spending in the Defense Department, defense contractors and the like, are you willing to go after that spending as well? That's been.
We have to go waste, fraud, and abuse. Yeah, and we're doing that.
Could we, I'm just wondering about your conversations on defense spending. Would you want to do that as a trilateral, or would you use the existing body that also already includes China and Russia, the G20?
No, it's the people. It's President Putin, President Xi. I don't need bodies. I don't need anything. It's people. It's all about people. It's about relationship and people. And, I've had a good relationship with President Putin. I've had a good relationship with President Xi. It's about people. And I think when things straighten out, which I hope will be in the not too distant future, the meeting I want to have first is a meeting with China and a meeting with Russia on slowing down, stopping, and reducing nuclear weapons in particular, and also on not having to spend the kind of money we're all spending on weapons, military weapons generally.
I think my question is, would you have those meetings separately with each of those leaders, or would you try to bring them all together?
Both. You start off separately, and that's what was happening. I was dealing with President Putin. We had really an understanding where we were going to denuclearize. What a beautiful term that is, right? Denuclearize. What a great thing if we could do that. And we were going to, he really liked the idea, and so did I. And we had then called China, and China was very open to it. And then COVID hit, and then we had a rigged election. But now there was no rigged election. Now we have an election that was too big to rig. That's what my whole theme was, too big to rig. And they tried, but they didn't pull it off.
Sir, as part of the reciprocal tariffs, would you also direct agencies to study the impact they would have on prices in the U.S.?
No, there's nothing to study. There's nothing to study. It's going to go well. The United States is going to become a very, very strong economically country. Yeah.
Mr. President, in the past, you have spoken against BRICS. India is part of BRICS. Do you want to dismantle BRICS, or you want to be part of it?
I don't care, but BRICS was put there for a bad purpose. And most of those people they don't even want to talk about it now. They're afraid to talk about it because I told them if they want to play games with the dollar, then they're going to be hit with a 100% tariff the day they mention that they want to do it. And they will come back and say, we beg you not to do this. BRICS is dead since I mentioned that. BRICS died the minute I mentioned that. And I remember when Obama and Biden in particular, I guess he said that, they have us over a barrel. They don't have us over a barrel. We have them over a barrel. If BRICS wants to play games, those countries won't trade with us. We won't trade with them. And if any trading gets through, it'll be 100% tariff at least.
On your
What would
cabinet,
be your-
sir,
You know what? When they hear that, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to say, look what happened to BRICS. They didn't want to talk about it. They don't even want to admit that they were a member of BRICS. That's what's happened.
On your cabinet, sir, we saw Robert F. Kennedy Jr. get confirmed. He's going to come in here and be sworn in. Mitch McConnell has now voted against several of your nominees. He voted against RFK Jr. as the next health secretary, citing conspiracy theories. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I feel sorry for Mitch. And I was one of the people that he wanted to go to the end and he wanted to stay leader. He's not equipped mentally. He wasn't equipped 10 years ago mentally, in my opinion. He'd let the Republican Party go to hell. If I didn't come along, the Republican Party wouldn't even exist right now. Mitch McConnell never really had it. He had an ability to raise money because of his position as leader, which anybody could do. You could do it even. And that's saying a lot. But the fact is that he raised money and he gave a lot of money to senators. And so he had a little loyalty based on the fact that as leader, you could raise a lot of money. Senators would call me and they say, he wants to give me 25 million. Can I take it? I'd say, take the money. But he engendered a certain amount of, I don't even call it loyalty. He, was able to get votes. But I was the one that got him to drop out of the leadership position. So he can't love me, but he's not voting against Bobby. He's voting against me, but that's all right. He endorsed me. Mitch, do you know that Mitch endorsed me, right?
Well, he did
You
have
think that was
Castro,
easy?
and
What?
he had polio, obviously, and his.
I don't
decided
know,
to
I don't know anything about, he had polio. He had polio.
Are you doubting that he had polio?
I have no idea if he had polio. All I can tell you about him is that he shouldn't have been leader. He knows that. He voted against Bobby. He votes against almost everything now. He's a, very bitter guy. And we have a very strong party. And he's almost not even really a very powerful member. I'd say he's not he's lost his power. And it's affected his vote. And, it's one of those things. But in the meantime, Bobby did great, got more votes than anybody thought. And I think he's going to do phenomenally, just phenomenally in that position. And everybody else likewise did well. Not only well, they got more votes than anybody thought. Tulsi, look at how she did. She did great. Marco got 99 votes. How about that? And Marco got 99 votes. And Marco, by the way, I have to tell you, Marco Rubio's done a fantastic job. He's been a great Secretary of State. They're all doing great. But we're going to have a swearing in today, and maybe we're going to have a second one because I hear we have a couple of them coming up. And the man behind me is doing a fantastic job, Secretary of Commerce. And I think you're going to see something very big come from today's signing. This is going to be a very important signing. Okay?
On U.S. Steel, sir, can I ask very quickly? You said you'd meet with the head of that company and the
Yeah,
Japanese company.
U.S. Steel is going to be here, and a lot of the steel companies are coming. I think steel companies, they love what's happening to them. We saved it. If I didn't do the tariffs from my first term, you wouldn't have one steel company here. You wouldn't have one steel. There wouldn't be a steel company alive in the United States. And right now, they're going to be thriving. They're doing very well, but they're going to be thriving. They're going to be coming out. People are going to want to buy those steel companies like crazy.
Are you still planning to mediate talks between Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel?
Yeah, I don't know. I think U.S. Steel right now has all the power. The tariffs have given U.S. Steel a new lease on life. Okay? Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go.
Let's go, guys.
Thank you, Press.
We leave the stage.